Loki, 9 Naughty Tales of the Trickster. Sif's haircut. Loki rolled over in bed, exhausted. They had been making the beast with 2 backs for hours, and he could barely keep his eyes opened. He was amazed to see Sif sit up and swing her legs over the side of the bed, about to get up. He gently grabbed her arm. Her smooth, white skin stirred his desire, and he felt his loins rise. He wasn't sure that he'd be able to satisfy her yet again, but he was at least willing to suffer through the attempt. Sif turned, her golden hair cascading down her back. She brushed it away from her face and flashed the barest of smiles. "Not leaving bed so soon, I hope?" he said. She pursed her lips but didn't respond. "Perhaps you're worn out as I am, and wondering if you can survive any more. It may be the death of us, but I'm sure it'll be worth the effort." He caressed her arm and let his fingers trace her bare back. "It's getting late. Maybe we should put this off for another night." She pulled away from him and stood. Loki nearly swooned just watching her cross the room. She was as near physical perfection as he had ever seen, and coupling with her had been the most sensual experience of his long life. He had lost count of how many goddesses he had lain with, and they had all been satisfied in their own right. But Sif, she alone had set his loins on fire, and caused him to scream out in pleasure, his body racked with spasm after glorious spasm. Only one other had come close, but those nights with Freya had been as much about pain as anything else. She had nearly killed him with her insatiable desire, and as ethereally beautiful as she was, he was captivated even more so by Sif. "Surely," he said, tossing the covers off and revealing his rising interest, "I can entice you a few more times." She glanced at him and smiled, and then turned away and pulled up her silken gown. "I think we should wait to regain our strength, perhaps another night." Loki covered himself up and frowned. "Is there something wrong?" She didn't turn to look at him. "No, it's nothing." He cringed as if a dagger had struck him. No matter who the female was, the response was universal. He had certainly heard it often enough from his wife. He sat up. "What is it? Have I done something wrong?" No, you haven't done anything wrong. It's fine." He narrowed his eyes. "It's not. Anyone can see that there's something on your mind. Tell me, what is it?" She turned, now fully dressed. The morning light streaming through the window illuminated her from behind, and he could see her naked form through her gown. She was tall and lithe and regal, and yet her tongue had done things to him that no queen would ever admit to. He continued stirring under the covers, and all he could think about as he stared at her was how it would feel to once more thrust himself inside her. I'm just tired, that's all. It's been a long night, and I need to get some rest. It won't be too long before Thor returns, and he can't find you here. You know what his temper is like." He frowned. "You said he was in Jotunheim." "Yes, he is." "Then he won't be back for days at the earliest." She glanced out the window. "He might come back earlier." Now he knew she was making excuses. Thor never returned from Jotunheim early. He always got caught up smashing in giant skulls. If anything, he would be there much longer than intended. "You know that isn't true. Why didn't you tell me what's wrong? Or better yet, come back to bed, and we can tend to the problem in other ways." She stared at him. I have a headache." "What?" "I have a headache. After last night I would have thought that other things would be aching." Sif sighed and approached the bed. "Loki, it was pleasant, but His brow lowered. "Pleasant? That's not how I would have described it. You make it sound like we played a game of Hefnel. Heffertaffel. I've played that game before as well. It's not like that. Look, it was nice enough, but... Nice? You weren't screaming, "This is nice," last night when I bent you over. You're making this more difficult than it has to be. He scooted back on the bed, unable to believe what he was hearing. You straddled me for hours last night, and now you tell me it was nice. That isn't what I'd expect after I know what we did. You don't have to say it. Then what is the problem? How can we do all that and suddenly you act as if you were no longer interested? She sat down on the bed. It's hard to explain. I'm fairly bright. I think I'll be able to understand. He was not successful at keeping the tone from his voice, but he didn't feel terribly bad about it at the moment. It's just... Have you ever eaten leeks? What? Leeks. They're roots that grow in... I know what leeks are. What does this have to do with anything? With Thor, I feel like I've been eating leeks for a long time. Don't get me wrong, leeks are good. Flavour and stout. You can boil them, stew them, add them to meat. But after a while you get kind of sick of them. And you'd like to, I don't know, try an onion or something, just for variety. An onion? Yes, they're root veg. I know what a damn onion is. She sighed. Well, I was sick of leeks. I wanted an onion. And I'm the onion, I take it. She raised her eyebrows. So that's fine, I'll be an onion. Now come back to bed. I'm full. What? Are we still discussing vegetables? Ugh, you're making this so difficult. What is the problem then? I'm okay with you using me to try out some onions. She sighed. I think I prefer leeks. He scowled. Onions are okay, but leeks, well, they're so much more substantial. Her eyes glazed over, and she made a gesture with her hand as if she was holding a leek. A long, thick leek. That's ridiculous. Onions are just as big as leeks. Most are even bigger. Maybe some are, but I kind of thought of you more as a what? Well, have you ever seen those little green onions? The ones that look like tiny thin leeks. He nearly erupted in fury. Fine, that's just fine. He jumped out of bed and gathered his clothes before heading out the door. Loki, don't be mad. I hope we can still be friends. He turned around in the threshold, still naked and clutching his clothes. You can swallow all the leeks you want, you brazen cow. I hope you and your idiot husband can still smell the stench of my onion in your garden. He stormed out through the hall, indifferent to the shocked stares of the servants, and exited into the bright Asgard morning, already hatching plans for his revenge. The doors were closed and bolted, but that didn't stop him. Whispering the runes, his body grew smaller and smaller, and his form changed into the buzzing of his rapidly beating wings. Was all that he could hear. He slipped through a crack in the door and flew off to Sif's chamber. Thor's great snoring threatened to suck him out of the air and down the Thunderer's gullet, so he quickly transformed back into his own shape. Thor was asleep on the nearer side of the bed, one fist entwined in Sif's golden hair, and she was on the other. Loki stepped quietly to her side of the bed. He gazed down at her for a moment, reliving a carnal memory, but a quick, flatulent burst from Thor ruined the thought and made him sneer. He pulled a wickedly curved knife from his belt. He stepped closer and held the knife high. He grabbed a long, wayward skein of Sif's hair and pulled it tight before plunging the knife down again and again. When he was finished, he admired his work. Thor would have his head, but it was worth it. He slid the knife back into his belt and walked out of the room. His mind was abuzz with the ideas to counter Thor's range. But his giddy glee kept interfering with coherent thought. No matter, he would have a plan to deal with the slow-witted Thor soon enough. He only wished he could be there when the Thunderer woke up and saw what had been done to his lovely wife. Loki woke to the sound of the front doors of his hall splintering and being ripped from their hinges. He leaped out of bed, instantly awake. He knew what was coming, and it wasn't good. "Loki, I come for you!" Thor's voice reverberated through the hall, shaking walls and rattling furniture like the low, throaty growl of the earth increased 1,000-fold. He knew Thor would come. He just hadn't thought it would be so soon. The dull brute always slept like a stallion that had been at its mare for hours, and he expected that he would have more time to prepare for the confrontation. In truth, he hoped to be standing at Thor's own hall, with his retainers at his side, a show of strength accompanying a wide smirk on his face when Thor burst out of his front doors in a feral rage. Loki imagined him to be unclothed, that he would be so caught up in a rage and fury that he would neglect to dress and simply charge outside, eager to have his hands around Loki's neck as soon as possible. A rending crash shook the hall and woke him from his daydream. Things had not panned out as he hoped, and he would gain nothing from musing on all the ways he would have mocked Thor if only things had gone his way. He ran towards the tall windows of his chamber and spoke the runes. He felt his body changing, becoming smaller and lighter, while he gazed impatiently at the expanse of Asgard below. He perched on the sill and stretched out his nearly transformed wings, ready to take flight. An explosion behind him made his head turn back to see the cause. In that split second, he lost what little advantage he may have had in escaping from Thor's fury. The bricks tumbled to the floor as Thor leapt forward, his face a rictus of anger. Dust and broken stone flew everywhere. Loki turned back and leapt out the window. The transformation not completely finished. Still, it would probably be better to fall all the way to the ground than be caught by Thor in a grip of berserker rage. He barely felt the wind beneath him, however, before he was snatched out the air, his avian bones snapping audibly. He was brought close to Thor's clenched teeth. "Let me see your face." He squirmed in the Thunderer's grip, feeling bones grind against each other, but there was no escape from Thor's fist. "Let me see your face, you fell creature, or I'll grind you until you are nothing but shattered beak and bent feathers." Loki whispered the runes, and his true form began to take hold, until his neck was clutched in Thor's iron grip. He grasped at Thor's hand while he hung there, barely able to take breath. Thor's eyes blazed fire. "What have you done? What have you done to Sif? It was a... If you say it was a joke, I'll snap you in two." Loki closed his mouth. "Now, Trickster, now, you will fix this. You will fix my wife so that she does not stare back at me like some weeping, hairless vulture. You will fix her tresses, or I will grind you into dust until the foul stain of your existence is no longer even a memory." Loki nodded. I will fix it, I swear." Thor sneered. "Tell me how." Loki's eyes went wide. There will... Tell me." His mind raced, the grip on his throat making it hard to concentrate, but an answer came. "The dwarves. I'll see the dwarves. They will have a way to fix it." Thor didn't respond, and Loki feared that his answer would not be satisfactory, that Thor would simply crush his throat and be done with it.